Yelizaveta, are you sure you should be doing this alone with her? I look away from the notes and ideas I've been collecting, glancing up towards the voice. Then I twist my neck to glance even further up, because Lady Vesuvius is absolutely ridiculously tall. Her radiant scales pulse with blob-like collections of color, chromatophores, she called them, each too small for anyone else to see. Packed tightly together in beautiful collections of different hues, they expand and bloom when she wills them to, filling the membrane within each translucent scale with the color that she chooses. The effect is somewhat lost on me since I can see each individual blob of pigment, but apparently to normal human senses they all blend together to form a single, vibrant shade of whatever she wants. It's still beautiful to my senses, though in a vastly different way than intended. We've relocated for now, flying out of the city to think and regroup. Vita led the way, navigating for us without telling us where she was going. The answer, it turned out, was a poor village, the people there starving thanks to us siphoning in supplies from farmers far in excess of what the country he twisted could actually support. Vita touched down in the middle of town, fully visible, and while our presence was fairly obviously a source of panic at first, hunger won out over fear when Vita started giving out our travel rations. Or maybe Malrosa did? Either way, I'm definitely taking that as a good sign. We're currently holed up in an empty home, as its previous inhabitants were already suffering from illness when ours forced them to starve as well. They were dead long before we got here. Capita is still unconscious, tied up more for ease of carry than any vain belief that rope would impede her. Lark is out in the countryside, hunting for game that we can use to build up food stores for these poor people. The situation with our soul plague, not to mention the mess we caused in the capital city in the process of killing him, are all entirely unaddressed. That's a bit stressful, but I think it's a lot better than the alternative, which would be rushing into an island-changing decision hastily. If I wasn't sure I was the best choice we have available, I wouldn't be pushing for this at all, I answer Lady Vesuvius. Vita and Malrosa need to talk about things openly and honestly. Everyone does, really, but most people aren't severely traumatized demigods. And you don't think she'd rather talk to me? Lady Vesuvius challenges. I hold back a frown. I suppose, now that I'm thinking about it, that severely traumatized demigods are in concerningly high supply. Lady Vesuvius is tense, uncomfortable, and raw in a way that I haven't seen on her since she turned herself into a giant dragon woman with a fucked up soul. She also desperately needs someone to talk to, doesn't she? Just like Lark did, just like so many people do. The more I look for it, the more I see it everywhere. I can't really handle Lady Vesuvius' issues right now since I'm so focused on the moth girl in the other room, but I should try to figure out how to help her as well. In the meantime, how to answer this carefully. She'd almost certainly rather talk to you, I tell her. But she won't talk to you about the right things. Vita needs to talk to someone she respects, and she absolutely respects you, but she also wants your respect. She wants to earn that, and until she feels like she has it, every conversation the two of you have will be based around that. Meanwhile, she respects me in sort of a vague way, but she doesn't really care what I think. Or I guess more accurately, she's not afraid of me thinking badly of her, and that's pretty much perfect for what I'm going for. Lady Vesuvius' scaly eyebrows rise ever so slightly. Well reasoned, she concedes. You're more manipulative than I gave you credit for, Yelizaveta. I'm fairly certain she means that as a compliment, though it doesn't sit right with me. I feel like manipulation involves a certain level of intentional obfuscation, and I don't want to do that, I hedge. But yes, I suppose I'm trying to figure out actual conversational strategies to help people better. Or at least that's the goal. I'm sort of making this up as I go. She lets out a non-committal hum, glancing away from me as if deep in thought. That immediately sets me wondering as to what's on her mind, though since this is Lady Vesuvius it's difficult to tell the difference between genuine cracks in her mask and purposeful affectations, even for me. I probably shouldn't waste my time trying to read too much into it, at least not right now. You're a bit of an odd one, Lady Vesuvius comments. Perhaps you fit in with the likes of us after all. I blink, somewhat taken aback by that. I feel like I've always just been the one bringing the human element to things. She scoffs, crossing her arms under her chest. If I wanted to keep the human element around me all the time I'd still have skin, she counters glibly. It would rather defeat the point of being a superior lifeform if there were tasks that I needed more humanity for. Okay, now she's definitely just pulling my leg. Isn't the entire reason you dragged me all the way here to Baldone because you needed someone who looks human for infiltration? Her lips twitch upwards. Needless details, she insists. I am biologically superior. I know for a fact that I have sharper senses than you do, I tell her frankly. And that's by design, she insists. The sort of details you're constantly privy to are debilitating rather than helpful. Are they not? I let out a frustrated huff of air, doing my best to ignore how the question forces my focus towards the quiet, exhausted mastication of the grateful families outside, the rustle of wind through the barren fields, the scent of distant rain and all too nearby illness and fecal matter. Thanks to years of practiced experience, my facial expression doesn't twitch or fade as my focus grows distant, though it does still hang a little. Most people don't notice that sort of thing, though of course Lady Vesuvius is about as far away as you can get from most people. You know, she says, softly enough to not exacerbate the overstimulation and close enough to bring my attention back to where it should be. I could tone them down, if you like. Reduce their intensity. Your talent would eventually reverse any changes I make, but I could teach you how to reapply them. I sigh, slightly irritated that this conversation is happening now, of all times. I need to focus on Vita. But I can't just leave this hanging, of course. Even if the topic makes me feel uncomfortable, no, especially if it does. Talking about uncomfortable topics is a pretty necessary skill for what I'm about to attempt. I appreciate that, I say, mostly honestly. But no thank you. As distressing as my talent can be, I've devoted too much of my life to controlling it to just get rid of all the problems with a few wiggled fingers. Lady Vesuvius gives me that too knowing stare I was afraid of seeing. Yelizaveta, she says slowly, have you ever heard of something called the sunk cost fallacy? Yep. There it is. I repress another urge to sigh. Well, you know us inferior life forms and our constant biases, I deflect. Sometimes we just have to indulge in them from time to time. It's a form of relaxation. She chuckles at that. We'll talk about this later, she promises. Damn. I'll stop taking up your time. Though Yelizaveta. She glances at the door, beyond which our resident moth woman is waiting. I'll expect a full report. She turns to leave, a scowl forming on my face as she strides casually away. You won't be getting one, I call out to her. She stops, but doesn't look back. If they want to tell you anything, that's up to them. She doesn't answer. I sigh, glance at my notes one last time, and open the door. Beyond the threshold, our Thanatos Lich of indeterminate identity stares at me with an inscrutable expression, waiting in a wooden chair. She's less than half dressed in her armor, which actually makes this the first time I've seen her in her current body without all of it on. Though her legs are still covered, her feet, chest, arms, and head are all free, revealing a startling amount of fuzz underneath them all. Impressively clean fuzz at that, much to my satisfaction. The room is sparse, the townsfolk having necessarily stripped it of useful things already. The furniture couldn't be given to ours or eaten to survive, though, so it remains. I take the chair opposite and sit down. So, I begin, my heart hammering with stress. How are you doing? She leans back in her chair, crossing her lower pair of arms as she rests her chin in a hand and an elbow on the armrest. That feels like a Vita sort of posture to me, though I'm not confident enough to make the guess based on that alone. I'll need to ask them for a name that can be used to refer to the two of them collectively. I've been sitting alone in an empty room, she answers flatly. Yep, definitely Vita. Well, I appreciate your patience, I tell her, smiling a bit even though I'm not sure she'll notice it. I'm grateful, and it's likely that she's paying attention to my sill right now. It's not a courtesy, Vita grunts. You're just right. I need to figure this out. If you say you can help, then I'll let you help. I don't have the slightest fucking idea if I can help, but I'm certainly going to try. Vita probably knows that, and she's willing to give me a shot anyway. I'm going to do everything in my power not to let her down. Not again. She glances at me and the expression in her eyes softens a little. Or, shoot. I guess knowing about her empathic abilities doesn't make them less embarrassing. So, how are we doing this? Vita asks. Well, first I'd like to establish some things, I tell her, sitting up a bit straighter. Am I currently talking to Vita? You are, she confirms, nodding. How can you tell? I can barely even tell sometimes. This shit is confusing. Posture and tone, mostly, I answer. I knew Vita from before she was Nathanatos, but I never knew Malrosa, and, well, actually, is there another way you'd prefer me to refer to the Vita and Malrosa from before your fusion? I think you mentioned that they're technically different people from the Vita and Malrosa I'm talking to currently. That's a good point. Vita scowls. I guess it is kind of confusing. Maybe I should change my name. Vita is the name he gave his son, after all. I didn't really care much about that until today, but she trails off, her segmented sapphire eyes unfocusing into an even expression that I'm guessing is a faraway stare. My own gaze drinks in countless details, fists clenching, the subtle tension of muscles under her chiton, barely visible in the thin areas around her joints, the stiffening of her antennae, her clawed, bug-like toes digging ever so slightly into the wooden floor. It hardly takes a leap of intuition to conclude she's more than a little stressed out about recent events. I give her a few moments of silence before noticing her tension seem to get worse, at which point I clear my throat and speak up. No one has ownership of your name just because they gave it to you, I say. And no one has the rights to your life just because they created you. I know, Vita answers firmly, and I get the distinct impression that I should drop the subject there. That's fine. I'm obviously not going to be able to address every point of trauma in this poor girl's life today, and it's okay if she's not ready to talk about some of it. It would be nice if I could help her quickly, but I know people better than that. This will take time. Well then, I say, we'll stick to calling you Vita and Malrosa for now. Just let me know anytime you're not comfortable with that or want to change it for any other reason, okay? Okay, Vita nods. Relatedly, I think it would be useful to have a name that refers to the two of you collectively, I continue. Does anything come to mind? I dunno, Vita says. I mean, I don't want to be Melik, and no other names really. She pauses, thinking about something, and as she does I watch a series of subtle shifts. Her back gets a little straighter. Her eyes flicker a bit more expressively. She casually crosses her legs. She stretches her wings a bit, as if she just realized they're sore. All these things occur while she's thinking, and when she opens her mouth I'm pretty sure the two of them have swapped. Malrosa announces. We're both still Mal. I was not expecting a name that adorable. Okay. Mal? I repeat. Is there a story behind that? It's what our sister calls us, she explains. Our Athanatos sister. We love her very much, and while it's a bit weird for someone other than Tilanica to call us Mal, I think it works well enough for now. I see, I answer, smiling a little. That works for me then, Mal. Although, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you just swapped to Malrosa, right? Yes, I suppose I'm currently in control, Malrosa confirms. It just sort of happens. Sometimes we consciously agree to change who's in charge, like when we were fighting ours, but since then it seems to just happen. I see, I say. Is that problematic for you too? Her eyes shift. A frown? A thoughtful frown, maybe. She drums her fingers on her thigh, the hard chitin making a satisfying clacking sound on the dragon scales. I wouldn't describe it as problematic, she answers eventually. We're both somewhat baffled by it, and we both find the situation concerning. We don't agree on everything, either. But all in all we're still the same person in a lot of ways. It's not distressing to be the one not in control, it doesn't feel like we're trapped or anything like that. We're still there, just in the back, I suppose. Vita wants us to recombine on general principles, but I'm not distressed, Vita finishes, the mid-sentence shift surprising. I can speak for myself, Malrosa. But yeah, she's right. It's weird. We're two people, but we're not at cross purposes. We're both at home in our own head, I guess. Having a roommate in that head is a bit unwanted, but it's not like I hate her or anything. Malrosa said you wanted to recombine though, is that true? I ask. They're treating each other like different people, so I'm going to treat the two of them as different people, and that means not taking what they say about one another as anything more reliable than hearsay. I'm going to question, confirm, and let them each speak for themselves. Well, it's a bit freaky, isn't it? Vita asks. Interesting that she phrased it as a question. What do you mean? I ask back. Well, like, I've always been a bit weird, she starts hesitantly. You know, like just Vita being Vita again, freaking people out and not understanding why. People already think I'm insane. And if I walk up to them and go whoops, I'm two people now, have fun figuring out which name to use, they're just going to assume I'm even more nuts. Well, I do find figuring out which name to use to be pretty fun, I admit, trying to inject a bit of levity into things and immediately panicking about it. What if it backfires? Thankfully, she lets out a snort of amusement. Only because you're good at it, Vita answers. Everyone who isn't super perceptive is going to see the same mal all the time, except now she'll be doing loopy bullshit. It's a pain in the ass I'd rather avoid. I can feel when people are judging me, you know? I don't usually care, but I can still feel it. That doesn't sound pleasant, I comment honestly, trying to encourage this particular line of conversation to continue. It really isn't, Vita confirms. I used to be able to go through life not knowing or caring what anyone thought about me. I didn't really have the luxury of caring. But now I get to constantly be aware of how everyone on the damn island, even people I thought were my friends, think of me more as a problem than a person. And I wish I could just not care about that, but it sucks anyway. I'm sorry about treating you that way, I answer firmly, and about failing to discourage others from doing the same. Your apology doesn't matter, Vita lies. I get why it happens, I'm not stupid. I'm presenting myself as a problem to people. As a force of nature. We can't reasonably expect to put ourselves above people and be treated as one of them simultaneously. I nod slowly, fairly certain that the last sentence there had been spoken by Malrosa. When she continues, though, it's Vita talking once again, as if there hadn't been an interruption at all. What I want to present myself as isn't as a problem, but as a solution. I don't want to make things worse for people, that to defeat the point of putting in all this effort. Again, I watch her body fill with tension, her gaze drifting away from me. Maybe I shouldn't put in the effort, she says quietly. It's not like humans are ever going to trust me anyway. I don't need to be able to understand her expression or her body language to hear the cold, insidious anger in her words. I allow myself a quiet exhale, glancing down at my notes. There's a lot I could say in response to that, but her struggle with these sorts of problems is obviously stemming from a lot of trauma that I'm partially responsible for, and I can't just logic that kind of thing away with a few words. Trust will have to be demonstrated, not just discussed. Well, I ask instead, why do you want to put in the effort? I want to say she blinks at that, though it's difficult to associate the concept of blinking with her complete lack of eyelids. The hexes of her eyes all just scrunch shut for a brief moment in an expression of surprise before she looks away again, her voice soft. Because in Liriope, no one is hungry, she answers simply. Can you elaborate? I ask. The thing is, I don't feel like I should have to, she answers, letting out an irritated huff. I feel like I should be able to go, hey, there are more than 0 people currently starving to death, your society is fucked and it needs to be overturned right now. And everyone should just think that's imminently reasonable. But it doesn't work that way. Humans only care about their own problems, so the only people who care about starvation are the people too hungry to do anything about it. They will always be this bad, unless someone steps in and fixes it for them. Is every human like that? She glowers at me, tendrils of her soul twisting with barely restrained fury for a few moments before she finds an answer to my question, one that relaxes her a little. No. I guess not. You were part of the problem before, but you actually cared enough to change. You saw it and you changed. And there are people like Lynn, too, who become strong and immediately turn around to give that strength to others. A shift takes her. The smoldering embers of rage become cooler calculations, her face becoming more expressive yet less emotional at the same time. People are complicated, Malrosa admits. If not for cruel, heartless monsters, if not for the base evil of apathy, I wouldn't be who I am today. But I wouldn't be me without love and kindness either. We just wish we could live in a world that has the love and kindness without the evil, is all. We're so strong it feels like we should be able to rip that dream out of fiction and into reality with our own 2 hands. What else is this kind of power even for? But it turns out it's more complicated than that, I finish for her. Impossibly so, Malrosa confirms, slumping slightly. Every idea we come up with gets shot down, Usually for good reason. I just feel worthless. So horribly worthless. I can't believe I came back here thinking taking over would be a breeze. Well, let's step back a bit from what you want out of society, I suggest. That's not the kind of issue you're going to solve in a month. Let's put the focus on what you want. What does Malrosa want? What does Vita want? Not immediately, but in a general sense. Is that supposed to be a less complicated question? Malrosa snarks. I'm not asking you to plan out your life, I'm just asking you to list whatever desires and values come to mind. She fidgets with her hands a little, but stops the moment I take notice of it. Embarrassed about the habit. Well, I want to be safe, Malrosa says tiredly. I need to be safe, Vita adds. You've already mentioned that you're the most powerful person on the island, I point out. Yeah. I guess. For whatever reason, that doesn't feel like enough. I'm not sure which one of them said that. Maybe both of them? I think that's perfectly understandable, I tell them. One of them scoffs. Because we live on a horrifying death world that's constantly soul-taxed by an unfeeling god of consumption? She asks. A part of the question still hurts to hear. A part of me still wants to jump to the defense of a religion I've already decided I can't follow. It's a rather unfair instinct, but I suppose unfair instincts are exactly the topic of the day. I squash it down, and focus on her. No, I tell her. Because you've spent your entire life constantly being unsafe. You've needed to fight for your life for so long, I don't think the pre-merged Vita part of you knows how to feel otherwise. She doesn't speak for a while, her whole body seeming to lock up while she has what I suspect to be an internal conversation. Yeah, Vita eventually admits. Maybe. I sit and wait, getting the feeling that she's still thinking. I'm soon rewarded for my patience when she continues. While we were living in Liriope, we teleported to another island for a while, Malrosa says slowly. The island once belonged to a species of sapient people called the Iberians. Then a queen of Liriope took over the island for resources, but left the Iberians alone. She ruled them kindly, by all accounts, although those accounts are from biased sources so I can't verify their authenticity. Regardless, she was killed, and when her mother took over the island in her stead she was not so merciful. To my knowledge, no Iberians are left alive on the island. In part because I helped her kill the last of them. Men, women, and children that were just trying to survive. People that were like me. Like how I used to be. I killed them because I couldn't afford to disobey her. She stares intently at me, her antennae drooping. Liriope, objectively, is full of terrible people. But I don't hold a grudge. Even when they made me do horrible things, my home there is so beautiful. We are loved and accepted. Genuinely, truly loved, I know this for a fact. They know what I am, and even if they made Vita and I do terrible things, how can we hate them? They're only evil in all the exact ways we are. We kill and slaughter and fight for ourselves and the people we care about. We're evil people, but I would die for them and they would die for me. I can trust them. And that's more important to me than the fact that they used me to tear an entire culture of people off the face of the world forever. I let out a slow, quiet breath. That's a lot to take in. It's possible to find love and acceptance in more people than just them, I remind her gently. I know, Malrosa agrees. I have my human family too. I love them. But they never made me feel like my Athanatos family does. They never understood. So that's another thing you want, then? I ask softly. To be understood? She shrugs lightly. Yeah, I guess so. I don't really know why. We can worry about the why later, I reassure her. What else? Power, Vita says immediately, as if she was waiting for her turn. More than the most powerful woman on the island? I ask. Yes, Vita confirms. Like you said, it's not enough to be safe. I said power isn't enough for you to feel safe, I correct. Because it's not safe. Vita insists. Even ignoring the Mistwatcher itself, there are still countless people stronger than me. This island is a pathetic fraction of the wider world, and being top dog here only makes it easier to see how terrifying the real threats are. People that even the progenitor is afraid of. I nod slowly. I'm a bit terrified of the prospect of Vita not being strong enough, but this isn't the place to voice my opinions. We're establishing things. What else? I ask. She almost says something, but then hesitates, hugging herself with one pair of arms. This is private, right? Yes, I confirm. You're making sure no one can hear us, and I'll never talk about anything you say here that you don't want me to talk about. She nods. Then, I want Penelope to be okay. Because she's really, really not okay. I agree that Lady Vesuvius needs help. Nearly everyone does. Why do you still call her that? Vita asks. Lady Vesuvius? She's just Penelope now, right? What with the treason and all? I simply think a person's name is whatever they wish to be called, I tell her firmly. Yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense, Vita mutters. Feels like a stupid question for me to ask, in retrospect. Well, it's okay to ask questions here, no matter how stupid they seem, I say. I think it would defeat the point of this conversation if anything else were the case. Yeah. All right. Another pause. I like to fight more than Malrosa does, we think, Vita says. She likes to make stuff. We made our armor, but I'm not really excited about it all that much anymore. She still is. Okay, I say encouragingly. So there are some easily explainable differences between the two of you. Yeah, Vita agrees. We have different opinions on food, too. If only a little bit. We'll both eat anything, but she has more preferences, I guess. And I think I use our tentacles more than she does. We've noticed that when she's in control she doesn't unconsciously eat bugs. Okay, I nod. All good things to be aware of. Is that enough, do you think? What? I ask, genuinely caught off guard. Is that enough? Vita mumbles. For us to be different people, I mean. I lean back in my chair, trying to get my brain around why Vita is apparently self-conscious about all this. You and Malrosa both recognize each other as separate people, I prompt for clarification. Yeah, she confirms. Well, given your history, I can't possibly think of a good reason to argue with your self-assessment, I tell her frankly. Between the children of Nora and the possessions, I don't think there's anyone alive other than Aldrich with more experience in regards to being more than one person sharing a single body. Yeah, but all of those things were very easily explainable, Vita says. They were weird to be a part of, but there was always only one real me, regardless of whether she was handing over control to someone else or slowly merging with their memories. I was just some level of me. But Malrosa and I don't seem to be merging. This doesn't feel anything like that, and we don't know why. We'd assumed it might be a soul-brain separation thing, since that's what triggered it, but now our soul and brain are connected properly and nothing seems to be changing. I think we're stuck like this, and we don't even know what this is. The most confusing part of all of it is how similar we are. I'm not sure what you mean, I admit. Jaleesa, I think it's really, really cool that you can figure out which one of us is currently controlling things via posture and tone and whatever other bullshit you use to figure it out, but I guarantee you most people aren't going to be able to do that. And if most people can't tell us apart, if the two of us are so similar that we're going to be constantly getting confused with one another anyway, should we even bother with the names? Should we bother telling anybody about a complicated situation that we can barely articulate? They're going to think we're just pulling it out of our ass. I have more than enough bullshit in my life already. I don't need another fucking reason for assholes to assume I'm insane. She's yelling by the end of her tirade, clearly exhausted from having held it inside until now. The answer seems obvious to me, but I guess obvious doesn't mean easy. Do the two of you prefer to be addressed by different names? I ask. I mean, I guess, Vita grunts dismissively. Malrosa certainly does. Then you should bother with them, I tell her firmly. I think it would be helpful to let people call you Mal if they can't tell which one of you they're currently talking to, but I do not want most people to be calling us Mal all the time, Vita. No, Malrosa says. Ironically, I can't tell. I'm fine with you calling us that, but not anyone I don't know. Then perhaps a different shared name, I conclude, taking the quick turnaround on that name in stride. Not because you should try to pretend there's only one of you, but because, as you said, people are inevitably not going to be able to tell and they'll have to ask you first. Or they might want to address both of you at once. Malvita? She tries, wiggling her antennae. That seems like more of a Malrosa expression, and a quick look at her tendrils confirms that they're pretty stagnant right now. Vitarosa? No, those both sound silly. You two don't have to decide now, I assure her. My point is, I think the people who care about you will be happy to learn how to handle this alongside you. Don't go thinking you have to hide yourselves if that's uncomfortable for you. Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, Malrosa nods. Vita was the only one hung up on that. If people aren't used to dealing with a bit of strangeness around us, they're going to have to get used to it because we all know it isn't going to stop. Anyone that's worth having a major part in our lives will be able to accept us. I nod. I couldn't agree more. And actually, on that subject, I wanted to go back to talking about your family and Liriope for a moment. Sure, if you like, Malrosa acquiesces. You're here on Verdantop in part to acquire resources for Liriope, right? I ask. I've said so many times, yes. And you've also said that your family is expecting results from you, I continue. That a big part of why you're insisting on this conquest plan in a short time frame is for their sake. Could you expand on that? Her head tilts up a bit. Imperiousness. No, I think from the way her soul is glaring at me her current expression is suspicion. I guess that's fair. To whatever degree you can understand my thoughts, Malrosa, yes, I'm going somewhere with this. Yes, it's partially about talking you out of your current trajectory. But trust me, okay? Can you do that? I want to prove to them I can do this, Malrosa says, and I take that as a yes. I'm acting well outside the usual bounds of expectation for someone in my position. I'm a princess, not a queen. I'm also one that has clear ties to areas other than Liriope, and my loyalties are somewhat in question. All of these things would normally mean I'd never get my current assignment, but I asked for it and received it anyway. I'm being made an exception to the rules, and I want to prove I'm worthy of that exception. I'm afraid that if things go poorly, that exception will be removed and the progenitor will send someone else to do my job for me, which would get bad for you. So, are you afraid that Liriope would put your human family in danger? What? No, she reacts with immediate surprise. No, they wouldn't do that to me. Because they love you? Yes, she nods. And you know that for certain, I press. Absolutely, she insists. Okay. So, then what are you afraid of, exactly? I ask. Not to put too fine a point on it, but weren't you at some point thinking about killing every single human that tried to stand against you? So if Liriope comes in and conquers the island in your stead but leaves everyone you tell them to alone, is that bad from your perspective? Her mandibles open, then close. One of her wings flicks with discomfort. She scratches the back of her head with one hand, the front of her chest with another, and fidgets with the fingers of the last two. It's certainly not ideal, Malrosa hedges. It's not as though I want to see the island die, Jalisa. It's just, well, I think Vita can explain this better. There's a pause as I wait for them to continue. Malrosa's posture remains stubbornly Malrosa. Okay, well I guess she doesn't want to, Malrosa sighs. Or something. Anyway, I suppose the best way to say it is that it's easy to get angry at Verdantop, and it's easy to get terrified of Liriope. Not because they're dangerous to me, but because they're a dream to me, I suppose. A beautiful place it doesn't feel like I earned. Malrosa, old Malrosa, I mean, she was just a freeloader. I mean, children are sort of supposed to be freeloaders until they're old enough to work, but still. She didn't contribute, and old Vita, well, all she did was kill Malrosa. Hardly a good reason to be so lovingly accepted into her family, don't you think? So you think you need to earn the love you've been given? I ask. She lets out a huff of air, her belly rising and falling instead of her chest due to the position of her breathing slits. Athanatos are very interesting beings. So like us, yet so unalike. Well, Malrosa grouses, it sounds awfully silly when you put it like that. But I guess I do, kind of. If you obtain all the resources Liriope requires of you without taking over any pre-settled parts of the island to do it, will the other queens step in and do that for you? I ask. Will they kill us? No, she admits with some reluctance. They won't. I might look like a total incompetent, but if we're getting the resources we need they won't step in. Would you rather not look incompetent, or have a plan for Verdantop that takes more than a week for you to cobble together? I continue to press. I would rather have a better plan, she grumbles. Fine. You win, Jalisa. I like to think we're all winning here, I smile. I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't think it was the best option for you. I know. That's why you get to win. This time. I chuckle, even though I'm almost certain that wasn't a joke. What happens now, in that case? Melrose asks. Just assembling the raw materials needed from the forest won't be that bad. Lumber, meat, water. All of that is easy to get with the amount of magical power we have at our disposal. It's a couple 10 days of work, at most, and not even the kind of work that will take up all our time and attention. Well, I want to address two major things, I guess, I tell her. First is your anger. You, and if I'm reading the both of you right, particularly Vita, have somewhat of a temper. You're justifiably bitter as a result of your experiences and you have a tendency to respond with extreme force in periods of stress. Do you agree with that assessment? Yes, she confirms, glowering at me. What of it? It's not a healthy or productive way to handle stress, I answer. And I think you know that. Make no mistake, Mal, I know that you are a victim. You have been a victim of horrible circumstances and unjustified oppression for your entire life. But you respond to this by making other people victims. By spreading pain. And while I know you try other methods, I've seen you try other methods, you also know that you're not very good at them, so sometimes you don't bother to try. I almost always try, Malrosa protests. Trying is important. That's the difference between me and the people I kill. That's the difference between you and the rest of Site 4. Why you got to live. You tried. You did a shit job, but you tried. I do my best to show no expression, for what little good it would do me. That was a lot of problematic statements rolled up into one. I could argue against them. I could argue against them and win, I think. It wouldn't be the point I need to make first, though, so I hold up my hands in a gesture of surrender. Okay. You try, but you often fail because you lack the skills needed to succeed. My point is that, like any skill, it can be trained. You can get better at de-escalating so that you're forced to use violence less. I think it would be healthy for you to spend time and effort learning those skills, and I think you'd find them helpful. They're good skills for a ruler to have. She relaxes a bit, her eyes briefly flickering a strange configuration. Some kind of nonverbal communication? She catches that I don't understand and gives an embarrassed nod. Ah, it was a confirmation gesture. Okay. Great, I continue. Which brings me to my second point, you clearly want to do good. And I think that's beautiful. I know a lot of people that would have lost all desire to help others after experiencing what you've experienced, but you still hold on to that. It's thanks to Lynn, Malrosa says quietly. She's best mom for a reason. I'd be dead if not for her kindness. Note to self, talk to Lynn a lot more. And that's wonderful. But I've noticed you tend to run into problems when actually going about attempts to help. Your early interactions with Lark are a good example. You often fumble when you mean well, because you struggle to understand people. I know that's harder for you than it is for others, but you're a very intelligent young woman. That's a skill you can learn as well. And it's very important that you learn it, because understanding people is a necessary prerequisite to being able to help them. Really? She asks, tentacles twitching with annoyance. Vita, then? People seem to overcomplicate it in my experience. People have needs, so helping them means supplying those needs. If someone is in danger, you give them protection. If someone is out of food, you give them food. But first you have to be able to understand they're hungry, I tell her. What's there to fucking understand? Vita snaps. Well, when you were hungry, did people understand? I ask. In more than just the abstract, I mean. Did they really understand why you needed food? When they looked at you, what did they see? What did they think? They saw a street kid, she grunts. A gutter rat. And I saw that they'd prefer to not be seeing at all. That doesn't sound like understanding to me, I tell her. Do you ever look at humans and see an eyesore that you'd prefer not to? A crash causes me to jolt as Vita slams a fist into the armrest of her chair, shattering it into wooden shards. I am nothing like the kind of assholes who, she starts to shout, but her words cut off abruptly. She stares at me. I stare back at her. She closes her fist around some of the broken parts of the chair, crushing it to dust, as I watch the gears turn behind her eyes. The moment where, perhaps for the first time, she manages to dip her toe into the lake of real empathy. Of realizing the difference between understanding someone and actually caring about them. She collapses back into her half-broken chair, glaring at the ceiling. Introspection fucking sucks, she declares. It does, yes, I agree, a hopeful smile on my face. But I think it's worth it. I tortured a child once, she admits with a chillingly casual tone. Killed him, brought him back, then tortured him to a second death. But the whole reason he was there in the first place is because I killed his dad. I taught Penelope animancy, too, and that didn't turn out great. Do you know who Nugas used to be? Oh, what you know, I'd actually just been really hoping Nugas was someone who looked like Vita's old body as a coincidence and was obsessed with Penelope because of understandable reasons, like her being a giant woman that's constantly naked. Vita gives me the most condescending look I've ever seen from someone with a bug face. Yeah, you should get Penelope in here next and convince her to open up about that huge mess. She definitely needs to talk about it with someone. Anyway, after that, I killed Nora. She was my friend. She found out I was an animancer and wanted to take me to the church and wouldn't take no for an answer, so I killed her. And I could never understand why she wouldn't just listen to me. She listens to me now, of course, since she's a revenant. So I guess I'll never know, but based on what you're saying, hungry people need food. What did Nora need? I don't know the answer, but the bigger problem is that I never even asked. I've talked to Nora, actually, I tell her about how she died. Technically, I eavesdropped on her having a private conversation with Bentley, apologized to both of them about it, and then received enthusiastic assurance that it wasn't a secret and Nora didn't mind if people knew, but those details seem somewhat unnecessary. Oh yeah? Vita asks. What did she say? Did you know that she used to have a huge family? I ask. Her father and all of her siblings died in a monster attack. I vaguely remember something like that, Vita hedges. Once she became a revenant, she felt like she had to believe you, I start. Well, she did, Vita shrugs. She did. She said the hardest part of that was coming to terms with the idea that her family never got to heaven. What does it matter where they are? Vita grumbles. Verdi. Herm. I see it again. The gears are turning. We're actually getting somewhere. This is the part where I'm supposed to empathize, isn't it? She mutters. I'll admit that I might be bad at it. So, how do I get better? Just ask more questions about people? That's a start, I nod. From here, I think the best course of action is for you to go home to Lynn and Rowan, take a break, and let some of this sink in. Introspection isn't really a 1-hour affair, you have to let it seep for a bit. Oh goody, Vita deadpans. And to practice some of these social skills, you'll need to socially interact more. It's good that, if nothing else, you certainly aren't shy. Doesn't mean I enjoy talking to people. Then find people you might want to talk to. When we get back, Vita, it would be good for you to try and make some more friends. Vita lets out a long-suffering sigh, slouching dramatically in her chair. Not a fan of the idea? I prompt. Melrosa loves the idea, she groans. I chuckle, and she starts getting to her feet and stretching, apparently having decided she's done with this conversation, at least for now. That's okay. Things have gone better than I expected. More friends, huh? Vita mutters to herself as she makes for the door. Well, why not? Surely I can't fuck it up 4 times in a row. She departs, leaving me to ponder those cryptic words alone. 4 times in a row? What does she mean about screwing up a friendship 4 times in a? Oh, poor Lark. I hope she'll be okay this time. So that's the plan, then, Lady Vesuvius concludes. We replace the compulsion to love ours with a compulsion to dislike him, set that to cascade, then return later to wipe the slate clean. We'll have to carefully select propagation points and keep a careful eye on the epidemic, but as of right now, we just kick that off and go home, I suppose. We don't really have the resources to offer reconstruction aid to Baldone at this juncture. I hesitate, unsure if I should bring up the obvious burning question. I thrum my quills, soaking in a little warmth and flexing my talons on the wood floor. They dragged me all the way out here with them, so I guess I can assume I'm allowed to be privy to what's going on. Even if I basically didn't do anything. Sorry, but isn't this just the plan that got rejected yesterday? I ask, instinctively raising my hand before speaking like I was taught to do in Templar training. I glance at Vita as I ask, since we didn't reject the plan so much as just her. She looks kind of embarrassed, based on her body language, one set of arms crossed, the other set doing the crossbody tricep hold that I've seen humans do when they're uncomfortable. Even her fluffy wings are kind of droopy. What did she and Jaleesa even talk about? In essence, yes, Lady Vesuvius confirms. The main objection was how it worsened the prospects of island-wide unification, but the situation has been re-evaluated and the timetable for conquest has been pushed backwards. Pushed backwards, huh? So they're still going to take over the island and plunge it into war, just not right now. We're going to try to do the most good, Vita says quietly. Rushing things will only mess that up. It sounds like she's quoting something, but I quote things all the time, so I guess I can't fault her for that. It's weird seeing her like this, though. All vulnerable looking. Not physically, of course. My senses are screaming at me to devour her, to engorge myself on the raw, unparalleled power rushing through every last inch of her body, an urge that I know giving into would almost certainly mean death. Even if I were to kill her body, the only way I have to destroy her soul completely is to swallow it whole. And even that, I suppose, isn't even accurate. My digestive system is apparently just a conduit to an evil goddess, the creator of my species of cruelty. And of course she's apparently Vita's family somehow, so that wouldn't even help. I hate how people are taking her rendition of how the world works as fact now, but what I hate even more is that I'm starting to see it. Jaleesa, in particular, made a lot of good points. Maybe the Mistwatcher is a god, but does that necessarily mean he's a good one? Vita certainly isn't, and if her claims have any accuracy to them, whatever. It doesn't matter. Not having to deal with an island-wide war in the immediate future is more than enough for me now. Vita killed ours, we're going to. Well, I don't want to say fix people, but we're going to undo what he did as best we can. And again, most of these decisions were made without me. That irritates me, as much as I don't actually want to be part of island-changing decisions in the first place. I guess it's because I'm still here, for whatever reason. I'm still invited to this table of superhumans. I suppose if someone were to look at us, they'd assume I belong more with Vita and Penelope than I do with Yelizaveta. With any human, really. But I don't feel that way at all. Maybe it was a mistake to get involved. It's times like this that make me feel as though I've never learned a single thing since the moment August died. I'm still a child that understands nothing but her own weakness. Yet for the first time since then, I once again want to be stronger. If someone else like ours appears again, if Vita becomes like ours, one way or another, someone needs to be able to stop her. All right then, Lady Vesuvius declares. We will be heading home then, albeit with a few stops along the way. Flying formation, people. That's first on my list of things to learn, I suppose. Flight. Followed by teleportation. My speed on the ground means little in the face of those two things, and that's my main strength. I have to adapt and improve, as my species was built for. For now, though, I walk over to Penelope so she can pick me up. To my surprise, though, Jaleesa also comes with me. Actually, Lark, Jaleesa says hesitantly, if it's not too much trouble, I wanted to fly with Lady Vesuvius this time around. We have stuff to talk about. Lady Vesuvius, for her part, raises an inquisitive eyelash, but doesn't answer. I hesitate, glancing over at Vita. I'm less than enthused to take a cross-island trip in her arms, but I don't really have a good reason to say no. So I nod, and awkwardly approach the lich I murdered that one time. At least she's looking as uncomfortable with this arrangement as I am, though I guess that's a bit weird in its own right. Vita doesn't tend to look uncomfortable about anything. Sorry about this, Vita murmurs quietly. I know I'm not your favorite choice of transportation, but I think Jaleesa will be able to help Penelope with some things. Ready to go? I blink with surprise. Another unexpected apology. Not sure what to say to that, I turn around and lift my arms so Vita can get an easy grip on me and pick me up. She does so, her hard chitin limbs cool and unyielding where Lady Vesuvius's scales were pliable and warm. I shouldn't try to think about warmth, though. I'll cut her arms off if I extend my quills in this position. Lady Vesuvius and Jalisa start talking soon after our flight starts, though I can't hear them. They've put a silence bubble around themselves, so I guess it must be private. So, I guess I never asked, Vita suddenly says. What were you up to during the months I was gone? I was surprised to see you with Penelope rather than the Templars. I know you, really liked our squad. I tense up. Our squad? Really? She kills Melik, pretends to be him, and has the gall to say she was part of our squad? No, calm down. She fought with us when she didn't have to. She saved our lives. She only killed Melik because I killed her first. I can't get mad about something as small as a word. We learned that Templar Command was responsible for some perception event, or something. I answer as evenly as possible. Lady Vesuvius cornered them and Jalisa heard them lie about it. I wasn't really around for the perception event, but I know that a lot of people died. It was a big deal. They were evil. Yeah, Vito agrees. Yeah, they're right bastards. They arrested me in the middle of the perception event, you know? They got me because I was running around and trying to rescue people. Killing zombies. Helping. But they cared more about capturing me than saving lives. Yeah, I nod. I heard about that, too. There's an awkward pause. Sorry, she says. It's something that makes me angry, but I didn't mean to make the conversation about me. All right, I can't take it anymore. Where are all these apologies suddenly coming from, Vita? I ask. Not that I'm complaining, but... It's Malrosa, actually, she says. At least right now. And I guess the apologies are because I feel like you deserve them, but I don't know what else to say. Oh, I answer. I'm not sure what to say about the apologies, so instead I say, should I ask your name whenever we talk? I'm starting to learn how to tell the different Altrixes apart, but I still have to call her Altrix a lot of the time. Asking us constantly is okay if you want to, but it's a little inefficient. We ended up not liking my first idea for a shared name, though. I murmur, thinking back on past conversations for something to use. What about Princess? You were making people call you that anyway, right? She chuckles at that. That's not a name, it's a title, she points out. Yeah, but if it's a name, I think people would be less opposed to actually calling you that, I point out. She tilts her head. She murmurs. Yeah, you might be onto something there. Human independence, huh? I guess? It just feels like the kind of thing people would bristle less at, is all. Okay, well, when you're not sure, I guess you can call me Princess, Vita nods. I mean, Malrosa nods. Gotta get used to that. Not because I really want to interact with her, of course, but when I do interact with her, there's no good reason to be rude. I'll remember that, I say instead, since most people like to hear me say it even though it's guaranteed. I'm not sure what else to say, so I'm just kind of trying to get this conversation to end. Malrosa lets out a weak chuckle. You know, it's kind of funny, she says. During our human life, Vita used to think she couldn't make friends because she wasn't worth anything to anyone. Too weak, too needy. She thought nobody liked her because she wasn't powerful enough to be worth liking. We have since disproved that hypothesis. Yep, sorry, I sigh. Turns out it was just your personality. Malrosa jolts with surprise and I immediately tense up in fear, expecting to regret those words. What am I doing? I was just thinking about how there's no good reason to be rude. I see we're not the only ones who've changed. Malrosa laughs. I didn't know you had that sort of sass on you. If you're not careful you might even say a swear. I pointedly look at the ground, my awful invisible blushing reflex flooding my face with warmth. Why do I have to be clinging on to the one person who can actually detect when I'm doing that? I actually said the F word once, I admit quietly. Malrosa gasps in apparent shock, putting her two free hands on either side of her face. How scandalous. I know, I whine. Please don't talk to people about it. I feel so bad. Your secret is safe with me, Malrosa promises solemnly. The trip is a little more comfortable after that, for whatever reason. We stop at a few random places in Baldone for Princess to stick her tentacles into people and replace their soul tumors with different, less evil soul tumors before we move on. It's dark by the time we get back across the chasm of disdain and into our little corner of the forest, which is particularly frustrating to me because it means most of the people I've been looking forward to seeing again are asleep. It'll be a while before I can actually talk with anyone. Tired of suppressing my raging instincts to take a bite out of the person keeping me in the air, I take the liberty of squirming out of her grip once we're above the town, free-falling the whole way down. I land in a crouch, my legs absorbing the impact easily. I guess I'm finally home, and weirdly enough this place is home to me. Now what should I do? Well, I suppose the obvious answer is to check my webbing around the perimeter. It's been too long since I was here, so I'm worried about it. Fixing everything up should keep me busy the rest of the night, as much as I don't really want to do it. I've been doing a lot of things I don't want to do lately, though. I'll be fine. I don't know where the others go. Jaleesa has almost certainly gone home to sleep. Vita is probably doing the same, I've seen her sleep before. Lady Vesuvius, however, I'm pretty sure doesn't sleep at all, same as me, so who knows where she flew off to. It doesn't matter, I guess. I run to the edge of town and settle into a comfortable rhythm, repairing my webs, checking up on the many delicious smells wafting from the occasional still-living monsters trapped within. As much as the ever-present part of me wants to eat them, however, I refuse it. Every meal I've ever consumed, be they in my capacity as savior or sinner, has been a sacrifice to a dark god that I cannot help but hate. The truth behind my fate is that I exist to feed the very evil which conceived me, and my only possible form of defiance is starvation. I know that, eventually, I will have to eat or else my instincts will make me. Indulgence, however, is no longer an option. Before, I avoided food that would change my body. Now that's the only kind of food I can justifiably consider. Of course, none of the monsters caught in my web seem strong enough to be a worthy meal. At least the dark only lasts a little over 6 hours tonight. I could torpor to pass the time, but I'm restless and it feels wasteful. Doing all this repair work doesn't make me feel any better, but at least I'm doing something. Unlike the entire trip to Baldone I invited myself on in the first place, unlike the fight with Uz or his splices which Vita and Penelope took care of on their own. The feeling of worthlessness remains through the rest of the night, settling in as a deep pit in my belly well after the island overhead finishes its pass and I wander back into town to greet my soon-to-be waking friends. I feel so restless. I need to do something, to help someone. Oh, hey Lark? I could use your help. I blink with surprise, looking up at Vita, or maybe Malrosa, I guess, floating above my head. I've been so caught up in my own thoughts I didn't even notice her approaching, which is a bit weird for me. Her timing and specific request is also a bit weird. What could she possibly want from me? Well, Penelope and I are going to seed Cassia with the fix to R's talent, but I doubt she's going to be happy to see either of us, and the two of you really seemed to hit it off when you met. So I was hoping you could help us convince her not to attack us and junk. I squint at her. Why me? The first thing Cassia did when she met me was try to choke me out. Please, Vita says quietly. Well, I guess if she's being polite I don't really have a reason to say no. I nod and she lands next to me, leading the way to our destination. Which is totally unnecessary, since I know where we're going, and the moment I think that she slows down, walking in step beside me. Okay, I think I see what's going on here. I just don't know why. Aren't there better people you could have asked to help you with this? I prod her. Cassia and I have only met once, she was drunk for nearly all of it, and that was before I abandoned my position as a Templar. I really doubt I'm going to be able to do much. You'll do better than me, Vita shrugs. I mean, that's probably true. Low bar, though. Princess, are you asking me because you noticed me thinking about not having anything useful to do? She fidgets awkwardly. Maybe, she confirms. Xena taught me what patronize means, you know, I grumble. Sorry, Vita mutters. Sorry. Look, I'd still prefer that you come, okay? We're taking her back to Skyhope after we fix her, and I'm hoping you'll join us for that, too? We can visit Harvey. Are they even going to let us into Skyhope? I ask. I mean, maybe not on purpose, Vita shrugs. But hopefully we'll be able to work something out, since we have the cure to the whole soul plague thing. It would be way easier if we had the cooperation of the current authorities. It sounded like she had to force that last sentence out rather reluctantly. You've never really had a lot of respect for authority, huh? I ask. Nope, she confirms. Growing up getting abused by them tends to do that. And yet you're a princess. She's quiet for a moment. Yeah, I don't really know how I ever thought that wasn't a contradiction, she admits. Being multiple people sure is a thing. Jaleesa is right, though. I have time now. I'm not being hounded, I'm not being attacked. I can sit down and figure myself out before I try fixing the island. If, of course, things go well with Skyhope. I thrum my quills, considering that. All of this makes sense except for the bit where you're reaching out to me, specifically, I conclude. I genuinely don't think I'd do much good here. You're a weirdo inhuman monster who eats souls and yet still has a good reputation among Templars, Vita counters. Someone to help us animancers and non-humans bridge the gap is exactly what we need. An example of cooperation. I doubt I'm actually that important or useful as a symbol. It's not as though most Templars actually liked me. Also, Vita quickly continues, didn't you want to make sure to keep an eye on me? If I'm going, it'd really help to have an extra voice of reason, especially one that has proven she can kill me. I seriously doubt I'm still capable of killing you, I answer. I cheap-shotted you with a trick that won't work twice, and you've gotten way stronger since then. You'd absolutely destroy me. Well sure, but they don't know that. Humans are terrible at judging that kind of thing, even the ones that can sense relative strength. Weren't you human-like, a few months ago? She turns her head, staring intently at me. I can't read her face, but if anything the expressionless nature of her gaze just adds more to her next words. No. I've never truly been human. I nod, considering that to be a pretty fair answer. Though it does bring up some questions. By that same token, are you an Athanatos? She makes a slight, startled movement, one that I suspect means she hasn't considered the question before. As such I don't interrupt her when her main response is silence, assuming that she's just busy thinking about it. We continue walking for a few minutes, almost making it to our destination before she eventually responds. I am a Thanatos, she concludes. But only in part. I'm certainly more a Thanatos than I am human, however. I like this body much better, for starters, but there's also just the fact that I feel a Thanatos in a way that I've never felt as a human. I belong on Liriope in a way I've never belonged in Skyhope. Humans themselves have made it clear I'm not one of them. Athanatos have made it clear I'm family. And I like it that way. You have a human family too, though, I point out. Oh, sure, she agrees easily. And I love them to bits, but I'm also pretty obviously adopted. Maybe if ours wasn't discovered and Altrix got the chance to actually raise me, I'd consider myself human. But that didn't happen, and as much as my life was horrible I think it's probably a good thing that I didn't end up getting raised by ours. Ah, I nod. I think I sort of get it. It's not really about your actual body to you, is it? Exactly. She agrees happily. I'm going to ditch this shell at some point, but I'll still be a Thanatos. It's not about what I look like, it's about where I belong. And you belong with the warmongering insect people that breed my kind as weapons, I say out loud before I can stop myself. Better than the warmongering skinfolk that see my kind as blasphemies, she shrugs, not seeming offended. I frown, rubbing the top of my hand with another, feeling the soft texture under my palm. The adaptation is weak, unsuited for combat. But still. Skin's not so bad, I insist. I like it. Well, of course you would, Vita chuckles. You're basically human. I gape at her, not sure how to respond. That's objectively untrue, obviously. I'm nothing like a human. But hearing that still, for whatever reason, sent a flicker of happiness through my chest. Then I remember that this is Vita, the woman who fed me my own father and slaughtered countless Templars and, while they aren't technically bad things, also took Claretta from me and revealed the nature of my species to me, both of which were horrible and traumatic experiences in their own right. If she's setting me up, it's just going to be to knock me down. So I don't answer her, remaining silent until we reach Theodora's house and Vita knocks on the door. A tattooed, rotting woman answers. Theodora, the blueprint for my friend Margaret, has seen better days. Though she's thankfully not decomposing in a way that smells, Theodora has very much been falling apart since well before the day I met her. She's somewhat self-conscious about it, too, so I avoid bringing up the subject. The many metal-laced patterns that once ran through her skin have since been largely transferred to her bones, leaving the exposed bits of her skull artfully interwoven with orangish metal that shines whenever caught in the light. "Lark, Vita," she greets us, nodding once. "Welcome. Penelope is already downstairs." "How's Cassia doing?" Vita asks, and considering that she didn't correct Theodora's address, I'm assuming this is actually Vita talking. "I mean, she's understandably rather unhappy with the whole affair," Theodora shrugs. "I've already pulled out the rotters stuck in her and fixed that, but she doesn't trust us and isn't agreeing to let us put the cascading cure in her soul." "Well, I can hardly blame her for that. My soul apparently isn't fully compatible with the Ars Plague or any of its derivatives, but if it was I'd certainly be leery about letting anyone put some variation of it inside me." About that," Vita mutters, her antennae twitching. "On the, subject of fixing souls, Theodora. I figured it out. Or I guess more accurately someone else figured it out for me." "Figured what out?" Theodora asks suspiciously. "How to free you," Vita explains. "I can remove your soul's compulsion to obey me. If you want." "If you want? What kind of?" "Actually, wait. No. This is huge. Super huge. Vita can make unbound revenants now? My revenant friends can be free from her constant mental influence? And she's admitting this and making it an option? That's extremely awesome, actually." Theodora's barely connected jaw opens and shuts a few times, bony fingers clenching. The holes in her lungs prevent her from inhaling, but she braces her body, shoulders rising like she's taking a huge gulp of air to steel herself. "Do it now," she insists, "before I think of some twisted knot with which to hang my courage." "Ooh, poetic." Vita coos. "Don't worry, Theodora, you'll only be dead for a bit." And just like that, Theodora's body goes limp, failing to fall to the floor thanks only to some arcane force holding her in place. Though I can't see what's going on, I can to some extent smell Vita's tendrils dance through the air in front of her chest, twisting and reshaping something in their grasp. Barely half a minute later, they recede, and Theodora's body jerks back into consciousness. She looks around, startled, seems to cast a few spells, then finally glance up at Vita, blinking owlishly with tattered eyelids. "I feel exactly the same," she concludes. "I still love you." Yep, I mean, 2 years of being a mind slave will do that to you," Vita says hesitantly. "The main difference is just gonna be this, Theodora, flap your arms and caw like a crow." She flinches slightly, but then her eyes go wide. "Oh," Theodora says. "I no longer." "I see. I still want to obey you, but it's not necessary. I'm not compelled." "You're no longer compelled to feel the way you currently feel about me either," Vita agrees, nodding in confirmation. "So feel free to start working all the way down to hate if you want to. I'll, leave that up to you. Since that is the point." Ooh, me next." A pitch-black figure rushes into the room, grinning a mad smile of deadly teeth. "I'd like to hate you, Mistress Vita," Kiro the Cunning cheerfully announces. "Okay, first of all, it's Princess Vita, don't call me that other thing," Vita snaps. "Second of all, no. Third of all, fuck you. You ate a whole city, you dick. You're mine forever." "Oh, what's a little genocide between monsters?" Kiro argues, waving her off. "It's not like I can get hungry anymore. You won't have to worry about me, princess." "Shut up," Vita orders, and he does, his mouth snapping closed. "Theodora died because she was a victim to my stupidity. You died because you ate a city and I killed you very much on purpose. You don't get to beg or complain or roam around on your own. But I'll consider ending your life permanently, if that's what you prefer. You may answer." Kiro flinches away from her rage, his freakish legs drumming on the floor like a symphony of giant spiders. "I'd of course prefer to continue serving you," he mutters. "My apologies." Vita just huffs out an exhausted breath, looks towards me, and motions to the basement with her head. "Let's deal with Cassia. Then I'll finish making the rounds on my other revenants, I guess." "Did you already get started before this?" I ask. I mean, yeah. I was doing that for a good chunk of the night. Most of the revenants you know are fixed now. Vitamin was first. Vitamin was first? Vitamin lives with Lynn and Rowan, who are right next door. Why'd Vita wait until just now to change Theodora? So yeah, barring Nora, pretty much everyone you know who wasn't like a serial killer when they were alive, is no longer under mental compulsions. Barring Nora? I ask. Vita shrugs. She, very firmly objected. I don't want to do it without her permission or push her into it, but the concept of her permission is a little suspect whenever I am involved. So I'm not sure what to do about her. I'll talk with her, I guess, I sigh. Thanks. Ready to see Cassia? Sure, I suppose. We head downstairs, the glowering face of a collared High Templar greeting us. Lady Vesuvius looms over her, looking rather frustrated about the whole affair. Cassia, the fact that I am persisting with this absurd argument at all, despite the fact that you are clearly going out of your way to be as intellectually dishonest as possible, should be more than enough evidence that I have no intention of mind controlling you. I promise, if that were an option, I would have deployed it by now. All right, so you're probably going to use me to incubate a plague or something, the High Templar responds stubbornly. Cassia, that's not. Why would I even do that? Okay, I can see why I was invited to this now. Hello, Cassia, I greet. Sorry about all this. You've heard about the Ars Soul Plague thing, right? Hey, kiddo. And yeah, but it sounds like a load of crap to me, Cassia sniffs. It really wasn't. We just came back from killing the guy, actually. Cassia scowls. Lark, right? That's me, I confirm. Considering what I know about how the human brain responds to alcohol, I'm somewhat impressed that you remember. She snorts. I'm not some lightweight, she dismisses. Look, you seemed like a pretty good kid. Why are you walking in alongside a pair of animancers? They get to you already? No, they haven't, I assure her, wanting to point out that my answer would be the same either way but getting the impression that isn't the best way to handle this conversation. The best way, or at least the best way I know of, is the same as the last time I won her over. To answer your question, I continue, it's probably best if we find somewhere to sit down and have a drink. She narrows her eyes at me. Not sure if you've noticed, kid, but I'm currently held captive. We started our first meeting with having something wrapped around my throat, I tell her plainly. We can have our second meeting with something wrapped around yours. Come on, follow me. I turn back to the stairwell and motion for her to follow, Vita and Penelope taking one look at each other before stepping out of our way. They brought me here to talk to her, so of course they're going to let me talk to her. It's not like she can escape with the inhibitor collar around her neck. Cassia takes a moment to process what I've said and then barks out a laugh, following me out of her cell and back up to the ground floor. She seems surprised as she looks around, realizing for the first time that we pretty much just kept her in the basement of someone's house. Weird place for a prison, she mutters. That's because it was a closet, I shrug. We haven't built a prison yet, and currently we don't need one. We step outside, into the middle of the growing city that I've come to love so much. Cassia's eyes grow even wider, soaking in the well-crafted buildings and well-planned streets, the smiling groups of people walking together in the morning light, heading towards the crackle of the communal eating areas which offer free meals to the entire town. You built all this in the forest? Cassia almost whispers, the surprise obvious in her voice. I didn't, no, but a lot of very smart and talented people with the right combination of skills and talents certainly did, I confirm. Are you hungry? I mean, yeah, I guess so, she admits. Then let's go get you something to eat. We follow the crowd, or at least what passes for a crowd here. It's nowhere near as busy as Skyhope, naturally. A lot of people greet me as we walk, and I answer them with a wave, keeping most of my attention on Cassia as her head swivels around to take in every detail she can. You have this many people living here, but no crime? She asks disbelievingly. We have no prison, I correct. There's some crime, but not much, and it's usually fairly minor. Only a couple hundred people live here, we just seem busy because we don't have a lot of space to work with yet. The forest is still being cleared out and held back. Apparently this community started with maybe 40 people or so, But after I joined up with Lady Vesuvius, we started finding ways to contact the disenfranchised and suffering citizens of Skyhope and start smuggling them through the forest to live here. A surprisingly large number of people were interested, and things just kept on growing from there. Steady work and guaranteed meals is enough motivation for a lot of people, I guess. Of course, some people want more than that, and it's hard to really have more than a nice house and good food when we don't even have a currency yet. Everyone is treated equally in terms of general quality of life. Even Lady Vesuvius lives in the same kind of home as everyone else. Which is not to say that there's no inequality, I suppose. Some jobs are more difficult than others. Some jobs are labor while others are managerial. Some jobs require specific skills. And some people get really angry at the idea that their skills might not be as good as someone else's, and that they consequently do not get to do the kind of work that they prefer. Overall, though, things are run fairly smoothly. I expect that the problems will only increase as our population does, however. Thankfully, all of those problems will be the responsibility of someone who isn't me. We make it to the public cafeteria and I manage to persuade the people in charge of running it to dip into our limited alcohol supplies for Cassia. Food is far from scarce in the forest. There are endless sources of edible plants and animals, the latter of which I collect a lot of, giving me a bit more sway. Fermenting alcohol takes a while, though, and we can't supplement any shortages of fermentable plants by just killing more monsters, not to mention that the fermentable plants we do find are often used for a lot more than just letting people get drunk. Humans, however, apparently really love getting drunk, so we ration out the alcohol in such a way as to keep it generally available while still having enough to throw a party for special occasions. Basically, it's not too difficult for me to get a hold of, though needing to put in the special request at all makes Cassia visibly embarrassed, and that's probably a good sign. If she cares about imposing on us, she's more likely to care about what I have to say. I retrieve the food and drink for Cassia, find a table, and set it all down in front of her seat, dropping into the chair across from her. "How is it?" I ask after she takes her first bite. "Better than expected," she admits. "A bit bland, but not terrible." "We hardly have any salt," I admit, which a bunch of chefs have been complaining about. "Honestly, this is probably a fairly normal amount of salt for most of the world," Cassia admits. Skyhope is just used to having an excess of the stuff thanks to the great salt pits New Talsey was built on. New Talsey. A dozen memories flash before my eyes at the name. It's the city where I lived with August, after all, and the city that was destroyed by Kiero and Ketavan, where Vita revealed she was possessing my friend. I push the thoughts aside, focusing as best I can on the now. "Is the area being repopulated and rebuilt yet?" I ask, feigning curiosity. "There isn't really a city at all, anymore," Cassia admits. "But the salt mines got restarted fairly quickly. We're still not sure what created the White there, though. Our only real guess is Az did it, but if it's true that he was hiding out in Baldone, who's to say?" "Not me, that's for sure," I shrug. "Well, hopefully we can trade for some of that salt in the near future. Regardless of what counts as a normal amount, most of the people here are from Skyhope and they love the stuff." She pauses at that, staring at me for a moment before taking another bite of food in silence. "You want to trade with Skyhope?" she asks after swallowing. "I believe that's the current plan." "Yeah," I nod. "What exactly do you plan to offer?" "No idea, and thankfully that's not my job to figure out," I say, shrugging. "My job is mostly to keep the perimeter clear of monsters, but the crazy powerful people just kind of asked me to talk to you." "What did Lady Vesuvius want?" "The crazy dragon woman wanted to cast animancy on me," she grunts, her opinion on the matter quite clear. "Yeah, that was probably the cure for R's cascading soul plague." "She mentioned something along those lines," Cassia admits. "Is it really true?" "I mean, if we go back to Skyhope and start chatting with infected people about ours, then yeah, I think you're going to find that it's pretty obviously true. Actually, maybe that's what we plan to trade? Animancy defenses? Cures for horrible soul plagues? I dunno, I'm not sure what else we have on offer." "You want to trade the cure to R's soul plague? For salt?" Cassia gapes disbelievingly. I mean, again, I'm not really the person who makes those kinds of decisions." I backpedal. "I think we're going to be offering the cure no matter what, it's just, you know. I'm spitballing here." Cassia stares at me some more and eventually decides to just spend a few solid seconds chugging her drink. You are a very weird little gal, Cassia eventually concludes. But I'll admit, this is not at all what I was expecting when I got kidnapped by a freaky bug lady from Murder Death Island. What's her deal, anyway? Oh, the princess? I mean, she's half Vita. She apparently convinced Hiverock to stop attacking us? Wait, really? Yeah. She might try to take over the island later, but hopefully we can talk her out of it. We're already making progress. Cassia takes another bite, chews, and swallows it. This is all completely fucking insane, she concludes. Yeah, well, you should have seen what Baldone was like, I gripe. Ours really messed the place up. Which is why we're trying to fix everything he ruined before dying. Okay, Cassia mutters. Okay, fine. I didn't want to say it to those treasonous monsters, but I'll play ball. I raise an eyebrow at that. Am I not a treasonous monster? I ask. Fuck no, Cassia smirks. You're a drinking buddy. Sure, you look a little spooky, but I had the time of my life relaxing with you. You got me good. Is that a reasonable basis by which to judge a person? Mile per hour, I'm overthinking it. I do not understand her, but I suppose I don't need to. Thank you, Cassia. We'll probably be heading back to Skyhope today, since the problem has the potential for an exponential spread. That might be a little tough. Your naked dragon woman is public enemy number 1, you know. I guess that makes sense. We'll have to bring the princess, then, I tell her. The two of them are the only ones who can make the cure. She was your boy Melik back then, right? Cassia asks, tapping her chin in thought. I wonder what she was thinking. Probably could have killed me without too much trouble when I was piss drunk. I really couldn't tell you, I answer. The two of us aren't exactly friends. Which is why I'll hopefully get to avoid this visit to Skyhope. I really just kind of want Vita to leave me alone. Naturally, though, when Cassia finishes her breakfast and we return to talk things out with the others, I'm firmly volunteered to accompany them. Lady Vesuvius, apparently, has a bunch of things she'd like me to check up on in the city, assuming Cassia can get us permission to go inside. Again, though, why me? Why do people keep asking me to do these things? I just want to protect people without having to think. This is all way too much thinking. Don't look so glum, Lark. Vita says cheerfully. Malrose is way better at negotiating than I am. Everything will go just fine. Yeah, we're doomed.